Hey everyone, good morning or afternoon, depending where you are. Got people filtering in. We'll give it just a minute as everyone gets bumped into our webinar and we'll get started. Got a good topic today and one of the best Zoom backgrounds I've seen in a while.
It's not fake either.
Yeah.
This is real. Yeah.
I like it. I like it. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy Tuesday. I'm really excited for what we've got going on today. We have a guest speaker with us today, Erich. And I just wanted to start, of course, by welcoming everyone for being here and letting you all know this will be recorded like all of our webinars, and we will post a recording to our website. So if you want to come back and revisit it at any point or share with anyone you think it could be useful for, it will be recorded and posted on the website shortly after we're done. So as everyone's still filtering in here, I can see, thank you for joining us. Our topic today is all about cybersecurity and the scary things that are happening out there and how we can avoid being scammed. And as you all know, cybersecurity is really important to us at Yeski Buoy. It's of the utmost important to us to protect client information and make sure that we are doing everything that we can to be smart about using the internet and all of the things out there and all of the risks and pitfalls that we can come into. And that's why we're really excited to be sharing some of the expertise that we use and we value today with KnowBe4. They help to educate our team, provide us tools and resources to use. And so we're here to share that today. And I'm not going to do much introduction for Erich because he's going to introduce himself, but Erich is a security awareness advocate at KnowBe4. He's a veteran information security professional with over 25 years worth of experience. And one thing that I wanted to share as well is just a little shout out that KnowBe4 was just named last week to Newsweek's top 100 most loved workplaces. So it's a great and really valuable, necessary work they're doing, and they all enjoy doing it apparently. So with that, Erich, I'd love to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. And yes, it is a great place to work. And we are doing a really good mission, which is it kind of drives why we like working here. It's more of a purpose thing, right? If you work with no purpose, it's not as much fun. And our purpose is to deal with the issues of cybercrime, and especially when it deals with the human side of things. There are lots of places, lots of organizations out there that deal with the technical side of things. But unfortunately, what we find is people are getting scammed all the time. And it's such a heartbreaking thing for me as an individual to see this happen, because it's happened to friends, it's happened to family. And that's what I want to talk about here today, is to try to help us understand what it is we're facing with these scams and just the cybercrime that's going on these days. It's kind of out of control. And unfortunately, like the title says, it is kind of just part of our modern lives. It's something that we can't just play the ostrich role and stick our head in the sand. It is not going to go away. So we have to learn how to protect ourselves. Hopefully I can teach you some things here today that will be helpful. Now, background wise, my name again, Erich Kron. I'm with KnowBe4. I've been in IT and security since back in the 1990s. I promise you, I've earned all of this gray hair. But I've worked in all kinds of different areas. I've worked in the medical field. I've worked in manufacturing. I worked for the U.S. Army for about 10 years, where I ended up the security manager for the 2nd Regional Cyber Center Western Hemisphere, which sounds super impressive until you have to answer the phone like that every day. But we dealt with a lot of the U.S. Army post camps and stations across North America. And in this time, I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff happen. This is where I take my experience now that I work for KnowBe4, and I get to share it with other people. That's my role. That's my goal. I love doing it. And again, while we're doing this talk, please ask questions. There's going to be some time at the end for some Q&A. If something is super relevant to what's going on right then, they're going to ask me right here. So please don't be shy with these. Think about some of the scams and stuff that you've seen or maybe experienced, or some family members, or maybe you've kind of wondered, how does this work? What happens if this goes on? I'll be able to talk about that if we don't cover it in here in the end. So again, KnowBe4, over 50,000 customers. We're out of Tampa, Florida, where it is still plenty hot. We looked at the temperature and it's 87 degrees still here in October. So if you like the hot weather and hurricanes, unfortunately, this is the place for you. Fortunately, we were spared Ian. The Hurricane Ian hit a little bit south of us. However, Florida is all kind of coming together to help those poor folks. If you know anyone that's out in that area, my heart goes out to you and best wishes. So this is what we're going to talk about today: the problems we face, all these different kinds of scams that are out there in the cybercrime, and how we can defend ourselves and our organizations too, but just as importantly as ourselves. So the problems we face. Well, the key thing is thieves are everywhere now.
Eric, can you share your screen, please?
Oh, is it not shared?
It is not.
I am very sorry. I thought that had shared. Let's do this one more time. All right.
There we
do you
go.
see it now?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I'm not going to go back through those other pages because those just had pretty pictures on them. But here we go. Thieves are everywhere now. We just can't see them. And it's kind of interesting when you think about scammers, con artists, things like that throughout the years. This is not something new. Cons have been going on for a very long time. The difference is now they've been digitized. And back in the day, let's say somebody wants to con somebody out of some money. They had to kind of like show up in places and talk to them for the most part. We see all the stories of people selling bridges to folks. Well, they had to be in person at some point in time. Well, through the digital age, we've gotten to where we can do a lot of this stuff remotely. And what it's allowed to have happen too is one single scammer can now scam a whole bunch of people at once. And that's a big problem. They've scaled it to the point that one person can be scamming, 10, 20 people at one time. So it's really expanded, and they can do it from anywhere in the world at any time in any time zone and really not have to worry about getting caught. So a lot of the scams we see today, they've been around for a very long time. And what's happened is that's allowed these cyber criminals to learn how to make them incredibly effective. Now, I always use the Nigerian prince scam as an example here, because a lot of people are familiar with that, right? You get the email and it says, hey, I'm a Nigerian prince. I need to get money out of my country. Help me out. And you get a cut of it. Well, those are obviously scams, and those have been going on for years. Well, before the digital age, they used to go in letters in mailboxes before they went through email. So they used to have to, lick a stamp and put an envelope and mail it to people and then wait for the replies. And they used to have to do that. All right. Before that, even, it was called the Spanish prisoner scam. And that's been going on for, 100, 150 years. So they know how people are going to react to certain things. They know how to make them very effective. And that's what we're facing. The other issue that I see, though, is that people think that either I'm just a person, nobody's going to come after me, or they think that my organization, my company is too small, nobody's going to see me. And that's unfortunately untrue. Far too often people underestimate that. And from an individual level, we have to understand, even if you don't have social media accounts, and that's something I hear people say all the time. Oh, I'm not on Facebook. Nobody's going to come after me. But we have a digital trail out there, whether it's doctor's offices we visited, whether it's any of that, that's all digital records, and those get breached. Those ends up getting taken, and your name ends up on lists. Likewise, there's a lot of information that can be found about a person out on the regular internet through what's called open source intelligence. A lot of that is just simple things. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but things like property record searches can tell you a lot of information about a person within a county website that's public to everybody. So they're out there, these thieves, they're working this, and they have more information at their fingertips than they've ever had before. So this is one of the reasons they are so effective. Now, as far as cyber criminals go, they've really, really grown into something new. So the first generation, we've broken it down into 5 generations, but the first generation was kind of like what people still oftentimes think of when they say, oh, this is a hacker, right? It's the person in the hoodie, they're in their mom's basement, drinking Mountain Dew, eating pizza, right? In the beginning, most hackers, this was actually very much what they were like. But they were just individuals. They wanted to gain notoriety. They wanted to show off how skillful they were, how intelligent they were. And they oftentimes hacked systems not to cause damage, not to try to make money, not to try to do that necessarily, or to cause a lot of problems, but to gain notoriety. One of the first viruses out there just had a little like rabbit bounce across your screen every once in a while, right? Didn't really hurt anything, but somebody was able to say, haha, I wrote that thing. Well, if we fast forward a bit, things got very serious. In the next couple generations, people went, hey, wait a minute, we can do more stuff and we can even get paid for it. There's money in this. And that's where they went from recognition to remuneration. In about Gen 3, they started realizing that we could make a living doing this. Well, Generation 4 came up and even got a little bit crazier. And this is where traditional mafias started getting in on the action. Organized crime syndicates got in on it. And I always picture like Tony Soprano in a hacker getup, right? But that's not what it is. It is that they're adapting and they're very organized in how they do things. They know how to launder money. They know how to do that kind of stuff. So they started playing. And now where we are, there's this incredible underground economy that's out there these days. And a lot of people don't realize just how advanced it is, but you can go on the dark web and you can buy just about anything you want. You can buy drugs. They'll drop them in an envelope and mail them to you. I'm not even kidding. You can buy blanks for driver's licenses for different states, for passports. You can buy fully done stuff. All of this stuff is available out there very easily. And it's a very mature setting to do that. Most of the time you're dealing with a criminal dealing with a criminal. So they use tactics like they use an escrow type tactic. So the website, this dark web marketplace, whoever it might be, you place the order from a vendor there. They take your money and hold it until the vendor supplies the goods, and then they release the funds to the vendor. That's actually something we see in real places too. Like if you've ever ordered from Alibaba or AliExpress, the online Chinese places, they'll do that and hold it for the vendors to make sure that the people get it on the other side. So they've matured into these very tricky models to help protect each other as well. It's amazing what you can get out there for a few dollars too. Like I can buy lists of passwords and usernames for only a few bucks, maybe $20, and I can get 10,000 different username and password combinations. This is how cheap it is and how easy it is. They can also buy the malware that they use, like the viruses. They can buy that right out there and just work on sending them to people. So when it comes to this cybercrime, the key thing that happens these days still is email phishing. Now, there's also the text message phishing, which is called smishing, SMS phishing, or the phone calls, which is called vishing or voice phishing. We're super creative on how we come up with these names. But the real motivators around these are, they're generally trying to spread malware or viruses. Malicious software is what malware is. They're trying to spread that out there, usually in the hopes of eventually making money. Or they may be straight after money, like the scams that we see with wiring money and stuff like that. Or they may just be stealing data. Now, data can be used also to steal identities, to open credit cards in people's names, file taxes every year, like we see that in the first quarter a lot of times. But it can also be used, for example, for nation states that target different companies. So for organizations that have a lot of intellectual property, this is really common for countries like China to focus on them, get into the system, steal the intellectual property, all their research and development, and actually create products for pennies on the dollar compared to what it costs us because they haven't done the R&D and they have cheaper labor. So it ends up undercutting us in the global market. This is all big money for countries like that. So you can see a lot of this stuff generally comes back down to money in the grand scheme of things. But there's a lot of it out there. Now, every day, there are 6.4 billion fake emails sent out. So it's a huge deal. When we talk about this being like the key way that people get into things, email phishing is the number one way that bad actors and cyber criminals get into corporate networks. It's like their initial access. It's also one of the key ways that they're going to scam people like me and you at home. to include getting you to download things like banking Trojans. And a banking Trojan is a piece of software that runs in the background on your computer, stays quiet, does absolutely nothing till you go to log into your banking website. It recognizes those and steals your keystrokes and steals your username and password and sends it to the bad actors. That's the kind of stuff they're trying to get on your computer. But email phishing is the #1 way this happens over and over again. Now, the problem with the internet is we don't ever really know who's on the other side of the computer. Now, the internet was designed to be resilient. In other words, it was designed not to fail if, let's say, a major hub like a town or something goes down. The internet will reroute its data around that and get it to the other places. So super resilient. The problem is when the internet was made, it was never made with authentication or identity management as part of it. Now, what does that mean? That means the internet doesn't know who you are. It knows who you say you are, and it may know your IP address or your internet address, but those can be changed and spoofed. But ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, there was no way to actually log on to the internet. Now, it used to be we would log on to internet service providers that were already connected to the internet, and they would route us out there. And I know it sounds a little bit confusing, especially from the old days when we used to log on using modems and stuff, but the internet itself doesn't really have a built-in way to confirm you are who you say you are. We never have to show our driver's license to get on the internet. We never have to show ID. Now, what's happened is these bad actors have taken advantage of that, and they use it against us. So they'll pretend to be other people in emails. You get emails that are spoofed with other addresses. It's the same thing in phones as well. Like when you get a text message or a phone call and the area code looks like it comes from something local, a lot of times the scammers will use that to make it look more legitimate. So you'll open it up. Those are all what's called spoofed. It's pretend. So we don't really know what's going on the other side. Instead, what we do is we rely on each individual website or platform to know who we are. So we create an account there, we do a username and password, and then when we go back and log in, it recognizes us for that username and password and says, oh, okay, you're obviously who you say you are because passwords are secrets. Go do your thing. Well, the problem with that is, as humans, as people, we reuse the same passwords on multiple websites. So from an IT perspective, we can spend a whole bunch of money on our cybersecurity budget. But if we have somebody who reuses a password in multiple places, and that password ends up getting breached somewhere else, it can be used on our system that lets the people in. And honestly, all the defenses we have go, oh, well, that's this person because they have their username and password. Now we're going to let you do what you're going to do. This is a big problem. The reusing of passwords is a huge issue out there. And I get it. As a cybersecurity professional, I'm the person who stands up in front of everybody and says, you know, I need you to make a 15-character password, and it's got to have uppercase letters and lowercase letters and special characters and numbers. Don't ever reuse it. And by the way, don't write it down. That's an impossible task. And I get that. We're going to talk about how to deal with that in a little bit here. But understand that reusing passwords across multiple platforms is one of the key ways that things go horribly wrong. And these cyber criminals, they know this. They want to get your username and password. So they'll do credential phishing, which is basically where they get you to go to a website with a fake login page. You log into that and it steals your username and password because they control the website it's on. This is a very common practice. And even if you use those codes, the multi-factor authentication, they have ways to get around that as well. So that's a key thing. They'll use credential phishing. Then what they do is they take these, and whether they steal it from you directly or whether they buy a list from, say, another website that gets breached and all the usernames and passwords are stolen. Again, you can buy those lists for next to nothing. But what they'll do is they'll take those and they use software, and it's very inexpensive, like $100. And it goes through that whole list, and it will try those usernames and passwords on major banking sites like, Citi, Wells Fargo, all of those major places like that, where people are likely to have an account. It's going to try those there. It's also going to try them on major retailers like Amazon, like all of those other places like that. It's going to try them there. It's going to try them on email accounts as well. So knowing that people reuse passwords, they're going to try that and see how many accounts they can get into. They might also use something called password spraying, which comes into play if you use a weak password, especially a very common one. Now, it's easy to remember 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but that's on every list every year of the most common passwords. So that'll definitely be one in the list the attackers are using. Things like QWERTY across there, that's a pattern on your keyboard. Those sorts of things are going to be used, and they'll do the same thing. They'll take your email address or your username, they'll pair it with like the top 100 email or known passwords, and end up shooting it off at all these other places trying to log you in. And it's incredibly, it works very well for them, basically. And to give you an idea, just recently, this happened last month. This made the news. They don't always make the news. I see this all the time, but North Face, the manufacturer of like clothing and stuff like that, they had almost 200,000 accounts. It was 194,905 accounts taken over or hacked through that credential stuffing. Now, this isn't North Face's fault. Sorry, I'll be able to talk today. It's not North Face's fault. They didn't necessarily do anything wrong, but this is indicative of the fact that their customers have reused passwords across different platforms. So something was probably breached. It's in one of those lists. Somebody got a hold of that and said, hey, I wonder what happens if we point this at North Face instead. They got 194,000 accounts they were able to log into through credential stuffing because of password reuse. So this is very, very critical to remember and to know. Don't reuse those passwords. They also target social media a lot. And I had a friend actually in my own neighborhood here. She had her account taken over. She believes it was through password reuse because she had reused the password, was found out to be in a breach. These folks took over her Facebook account. They immediately changed the recovery email address and phone number, and they started using that account to scam her friends. Now, she has about 3,000 connections. She does childcare at one of the local churches. It's a big church. So she has a lot of people that know her and trust her. So they started posting up things like a PlayStation 5. And the story was, oh, you know what, we bought this PS5, but we're not going to be able to keep it. Letting it go to somebody I know. And people would reach out to them and they would send them to, a different Cash App, and they were scamming them for money. They also did it with puppies, with Yorkshire puppies, and said, we have a litter of puppies. We're doing a rehome fee. We can't keep these puppies. If you're interested, it's $300. And they had these beautiful, cute little pictures of these dogs and the whole 9 yards on there. And what would happen is people would reach out to them and they'd say, okay, well, we need the $300 rehoming fee. Send it to Cash App. And a couple of people got a little curious about that and said, well, this isn't your email address I'm sending it to, or your account at Cash App. And somehow or another, these bad actors had also gotten a hold of a copy of her driver's license, and it may have been in her photos or something like that. But what they did is they turned around and said, well, here's a picture of my driver's license. Obviously, it's me. I just don't have a Cash App account. So the people would send the money to Cash App. Well, what started happening is people started showing up at her door at her house saying, I paid you for the puppy. Where is it? Or I bought this PlayStation. Where is this thing? They started coming to her house physically because on that driver's license is her address. So these attackers, they didn't care. Now, this has been up for about 7 months now on Facebook, and Facebook won't take the account down, even though we keep reporting it as a scam over and over again. They keep putting it back up. And the reason is we believe Facebook ends up saying, well, can you prove that this account is yours? They upload the same picture of that driver's license, and Facebook goes, oh, okay, that's fine. even though 50 or 60 people have reported it as scams. And there's a police report behind it. And so you can see just protecting something like your social media accounts is actually really, really important, even if you didn't think it is. So another thing that these bad actors like to do, and they do this in organizations, but even individuals too, you may have heard about it, is called ransomware. So the first ransomware ever was called AIDS. It was also known as PC Cyborg. Came out in 1989, was distributed on a floppy disk by a doctor who was at it was an AIDS research conference. And he handed out these floppy disks with some software on it, infected the computer after 90 reboots. It encrypted the names of the files. You had to send $189 to a PO box in Panama. So the guy got busted. He got arrested. He actually tried to say, well, it wasn't really a problem because any money I made, I was going to use for AIDS research, et cetera. But this happened years ago. And it stayed pretty quiet for a while. And then ransomware really kind of jumped back up in the 2000s. And now with cryptocurrency there and gift cards, they're using that as well. Now, this is a big threat for organizations. This is a smaller threat for individuals, but it can still damage you very badly. And what ransomware does is it takes all of your files and it encrypts them with the same type of strong encryption we use to keep, say, our bank stuff secret and the connections on the internet that we make to our banking stuff secret. This is the stuff that protects those. Well, now they're going to charge you to get your password back. And in the business side, this has really exploded. Back in 2018, the earlier part of 2018, we're talking about the ransom was about $6,000. By 2019, it jumped to $84,000. And by 2021, it was up to $570,000. Now, while this impacts businesses more often than not, I've known individuals that had their entire computers encrypted by ransomware. And it ended up, they lost pictures of their family, their kids, like the digital stuff that they'd pulled off digital cameras before. They lost important documents and, lots of information gone off those computers. They ended up having to wipe the computer and reload everything and lost a lot of stuff. This is also spread through phishing. And again, it happens to people as well. The problem is there's no easy way to get around it. You either have to pay the ransom, which for individuals can be as little as $500 or $600. But even so, you run a real risk of not getting your data back. So the way that this all works and the way that phishing and vishing and smishing, the other types of phishing tie into this, they use what's called social engineering. And social engineering is basically the practice of using our people against us, like the fact that we are humans against us. So I love this quote from Mr. Robot. It was a hacker show on USA Network for a while. I've never found it hard to hack most people. If you listen to them and watch them, their vulnerabilities are like a neon sign screwed into their heads. Well, that's because we react certain ways to things. And there's some really cool psychology out there and some interesting stuff. I'm going to skim just the top layer of this so you kind of understand why it works so well. But going back to things like Daniel Kahneman, he has two systems of thinking, fast and slow. System one is fast thinking. It's our reactions. It's our animal instincts sort of things, the stuff that we do reactively without much thinking. It even works like if you've ever driven a long distance in your car and you forget 5 or 10 miles, you go, well, you were still turning the steering wheel and you were still doing that, but you weren't actually putting any effort into it. Your brain was on autopilot, okay? System two thinking is where we do critical thinking. This is where we problem solve. It takes a lot more effort for our brains to do this. And so we tend to hover over in the system one thinking a lot. Problem is system one thinking, we miss a lot of things. It's not very reliable. It's very impulsive, where critical thinking is where we pick up on stuff that's maybe wrong or off. Now, where this comes into play is most of these attacks, most of these scams and cons, they're going to work to get us in a very heightened emotional state. Now, whether that's anger, whether that's happiness because we've won a lot of money, whether that's something along those lines, it really doesn't matter. They get us in a heightened emotional state. And then they trick us into doing what they want us to do. So we're in system one thinking, we're not critically thinking, we miss spelling errors, we miss the fact that it just doesn't make sense that this email came in at 3 o'clock in the morning from the CEO, right? These are the things that get bypassed when we're in system one thinking. And that's their goal. It's to create a knee-jerk reaction that bypasses that critical thinking and results in their action. That's the formal way of saying it here. But what we're going to do is we're going to look at some scams, and you'll kind of get an idea of how this all plays into that. What's important about this is if you get a text message, a phone call, or an email, and it elicits a strong emotional response, I want you to take a deep breath, and I want you to look at it super critically. That's the most important thing. So looking at these scams and stuff, well, this is out of my own inbox. This is from supposedly Cash App. Said payments sent to, if you look in the subject line, had my email address. This message was sent from a trusted sender. And I love that they did that. It's planting that seed in your mind that, oh, well, this is verified. This must be real. Okay. They can put whatever they want in there. They could say this message was sent from a total thief and you probably wouldn't open it. But by saying a trusted sender, they're trying to get you to trust them, really. And so we've been trying to reach you in order to deliver your $750 Cash App gift card. Expires soon. Complete the necessary steps to get your Cash App, or to get the $750 your Cash App account. Now, if you click on that link, it takes you somewhere that is not Cash App. But if you look at the tricks they're doing, we've been trying to reach you in order to deliver it. So it looks like there's something been going on, and they follow up with it's expiring soon. So you're going, oh my gosh, I must have missed something. This thing's going to expire. They're already setting you up to give up a lot of personal information. Now, the same email can be used to get you to open a document. It can take you to a site where you give up personal information, sometimes like a survey, or they'll say, oh, we need tax information for you to be able to receive this. Or it may take you to a Cash App account login page, a fake one where they capture your Cash App login. Okay. They'll use the same thing to do several different things. But what's important is they're setting you up to complete the necessary steps to get your money. They're using that urgency by saying it's expiring soon. And they're using the fact that you may get $750 free to get you excited and happy. We also have these Amazon gift card scams. Now, we see these all the time. These gift cards, these really probably don't exist. What they're doing is they're farming your information. You enter your email address, so they'll take that and they'll sell it. And when you hit the click now, what they may also do is it may take you to a place again to get you to fill out some of these sensitive things, like your Social Security number and stuff for tax reasons. Or it may even try to get you to log into your Amazon account so they can steal your username and password there. At the very least, they're going to steal your email address and sell it to somebody. Now, the thing about these kinds of things here is, first, they're exciting, yay, but you're also, in the back of your mind, you're not really expecting to get the $500 gift card, but you're going, well, what's the worst that can happen? So you're willing to jump through some steps in the hopes for it. There is probably no gift card behind this. The odds are great that there is absolutely no way they're giving away any gift cards. They're just taking your info. Follow your gut feelings on these sorts of things, because there's a lot of different ones out here like this. Now, this is a survey scam here, supposedly came from Lowe's, right? The home improvement store. So $50 Lowe's reward, participation required. That is mentally setting you up to take an action. Okay. These are all subliminal things. It's not things that we actively think about, but it's things that our mind's processing. So it's saying, take our survey now. Over 5 million in offer rewards claimed so far. There's the trust us. So if they said that they've already paid out 5 million, then $50 to me is no big deal, right? If you look at the actual email address it came from, it says it's from Lowe's, but look at that email address. That is not Lowe's by any means. But picking apart the actual email too, again, they're saying 5 million claimed so far, hoping that you'll trust them as, oh, this must be legit because they say they've paid out 5 million. But then you're going to click that survey. It also does not go to Lowe's, it goes to that googleapis.com. And you will probably be entering some information in here again, sensitive information they're going to try to use to either continue attacks down the line or steal your identity in one way or another. So you can see where this kind of gets you a little bit riled up there. Now, the next one I thought was interesting. Remember, these were all in my inbox. This was an extortion scam that I thought was very clever. It says, we're here to share some important information with you. Have you heard about Pegasus? You've become a collateral victim. And it looked like it came from my Gmail address to my Gmail address. I think they're trying to show that they're elite hackers or something. But basically, we've seen these kinds of things happen a lot. In this case, it said, have you heard about Pegasus? You become a collateral victim. Now, Pegasus is a real phone virus that actually made the news not too long ago. It's developed by an Israeli organization, and it was used to spy on journalists. It was used to spy on heads of state or political dissidents. It actually got to the point with the journalists that Amnesty International actually has a program where journalists can send their phone in, and they have people that will identify and remove this malware on their phones. Well, it's very powerful. It can turn on microphones. It can turn on cameras. It can see all kinds of information on the phone. It can actually get in and record even encrypted conversations across Signal and stuff, because it's on your phone, which it's decrypted at your phone. So this is real. And if you do a search on Pegasus phone virus, you're going to see that this is a real thing. Well, what they're trying to do here is convince you that they have access to this. They've put it on your phone. And I think they wanted to charge me $1,300 or something to not release the videos and phone calls and all the information that they stole off my phone. This is not real. But they're using the fact that if you Google this information, you're going to find that there is a speck of truth to it. Although, with that particular piece of malware, it was tightly controlled by the Israeli group and in some cases, perhaps the government, as to who it goes to. It's not going to go to someone like this that's sending stuff to your Gmail account. But you can see how they can get you riled up. They can use a sliver of truth where if you Google it, you'll find that there is a reference there. This is the tricks that they use. Now, another one we'll see again coming up with the holidays, package or parcel deliveries. These are FedEx, UPS, DHL, United States Postal Service. They're going to try to get you to click down here and maybe put in some sensitive information. Sometimes they'll say you have to pay a tax or a tariff or an import fee. Sometimes they'll have you open a document that's infected with the virus. Again, these are reused. Now, if you look at this, though, at the email address up there, this FedEx email was supposed to have come from FedEx, but in fact, it comes from test1@merchminer.com. That's a huge red flag that makes you say, you know what? Not a real thing. Watch those from addresses, because these scams, although incredibly common, will never come from actually FedEx.com. Same with invoice or purchase order phishes. We see this a lot where somebody tries to get you, say there's a purchase order or an invoice or something like that. And they'll try to get you to open a document. Like in this case here, it was a infected document. It says it's ADP. You see up there, it comes from message@adpr.com. That's not ADP again. So this is some of the tricks they use. This is one of the most common ones that we see. Remember, if something seems odd, hover that link. The link doesn't go to invoices.adp.com. That's a huge red flag. And then that reply to address. In these cases, either report them or delete them. If you're within the organization and they like you to report them, do that, obviously. But otherwise, delete them, ignore them. This is not for you. Once you start looking at these tells, it's a lot easier to see that these are fakes. So these are the ones that deal a lot with having links and infected documents or trying to steal your information. The other kinds of scams revolve around what's called something called CEO fraud or business email compromise. In a lot of cases, this is the same tactics and techniques that they use psychologically on individuals, but within organizations as well. So what they do here, there's no link, there's no document attached or anything like that. This is purely getting us to do things. And some examples I have of this are like the wire transfer fraud ones. And I've seen similar ones like this that have impacted people individually, especially around real estate. So say you're going to do a down payment or a deposit on a home, earnest money, something like that. A lot of times the title companies will be a target, and they have been known to have attackers get into their email boxes and turn around when it's time to wire the money and say, oh, by the way, I gave you the wrong account number. Send it to this account number instead. There was a couple here in Florida that lost $70,000 of their down payment because they sent it right to an attacker controlled email account or bank account. So these things are happening in the real world. But just to give you an idea of the psychology behind some of these, this one was from supposedly a CEO to the COO, and it starts off on the bottom there. Are you in the office? Now, nobody is going to jump up and down and go, it's a phishing email. It's a phishing email. It's not. It just doesn't have that feel. It's nice. It's, hey, typical communication. The COO replies, yes, I am. Well, now the CEO says, I need a payment process to a new vendor, need to hit their account today. So account today is an urgency piece. They're explaining it. They're using authority as the CEO to get this done. Now, if you look at it, it came from an earthlink.net email address. That was not an actual corporate address. Now, if you reply to them and say, I don't recognize that email address, they'll have a story behind that. They'll say something to the extent of, my email account is having problems. I got the IT group working on it, so I had to use my personal account. They will fill in those kind of blanks. They know how to reply. But this kind of thing is how a lot of money gets sent. As a matter of fact, in 2021, the FBI said there was $1.8 billion in identified losses through this kind of a scam that runs through this. Now, again, it's subtle, but they're using the authority of the CEO to put pressure on even a COO, or sometimes this happens in lower areas, purchasing or something like that. They use that pressure on them. Now, another one that we have is gift cards. If you see gift cards, anything asking for gift cards to be purchased or paid with gift cards, be very, very, very cautious around these. Gift cards are a favorite of scammers because once you've purchased the gift cards and once they have them, you basically can't go back and, like you could maybe a bank transaction and fight it, or a credit card transaction and fight it. And a lot of times credit cards have a hard time even paying back for anything to do with gift cards. So keep that in mind. This was very simple, supposedly from an executive. I need you to make a purchase of iTunes gift cards this morning. It's for a vendor. Are you available to make the purchase now? This is an urgency piece, making sure you don't have time to think of things. They're giving you an explanation up front. It's a gift for a vendor. This is super, super common. I see a lot of money lost to this. So if somebody's asking for gift cards, don't fall for it, okay? I've also seen people's payroll get redirected. So again, a lot of times this will be an executive, but it could just be someone like you that they're pretending to be. They contact your payroll department and say something like, hey, my bank account was taken over, or there was some fraudulent activity. I had to shut that down. Here's my new bank account number. I need to make sure my next paycheck goes to that account. In the case of like executives, they'll use that authority to push the matter a little bit. Next thing you know, the next paycheck ends up going to an account that's controlled by these hackers. This has happened over and over again when I travel and I do talks to organizations and groups. I hear this having happened all the time. So if somebody comes back to you and says, hey, I got that request to change your account number, you need to be on top of this very, very quickly. Just know that if you ever get one of those requests from someone in your HR or payroll or whoever handles that. And last but not least, one of the favorites out there and longtime ones, this is the tech support scams. So basically, They pop this up on your screen, or they may call you and say, this is Microsoft, you have a virus, we're here to help you. And they'll either sell you antivirus, which oftentimes is a virus in and of itself that you install on your computer that ends up giving them access, or they'll try to talk you into downloading a program that will allow them to remotely access your computer. So once they can do that, then they get in, and while they're supposedly cleaning this virus, they're trying to look for any login stuff, any banking details, documents, photos, anything they can steal from you and then maybe use as leverage or to make money. So anytime you get one of these things saying just out of the blue, we've spotted your computer has a virus, we need to help you fix it, don't fall for that. It's been going on for years and continues to get a lot of people in trouble. So how do we defend? Well, again, these are kind of the things that they use against us. If you have that strong emotional response, take a deep breath. They'll use greed. They'll use curiosity. They'll use self-interest. There's almost always urgency. Oftentimes there's fear, whether it's fear of missing out on a deal or fear of losing your job. There's also helpfulness. Like I said, down here in Florida, we've had Hurricane Ian come through. There are lots of scammers out there that are reaching out with fake charities, among the other types of scams that are going on. So they'll use those as a catalyst to get people who are going, oh my gosh, I really feel for those people, I want to donate. But in turn, it's actually a fake charity. So when it comes to your passwords, there's some things we can do with that too. I love what's called password vaults. It's something such as LastPass or 1Password. There's Bitwarden out there. There's KeyPass. There's a number of them called password vaults. And what they do is they help you generate unique passwords, and then they securely store them. So you don't have the same password for any two sites. They're really easy to come up with a long, unique password. If you've ever sat there looking at something because it says, oh, it's time give us a new password. And you always have that, oh, I got to think this one through. It's 10 characters and it's got all this. These are fantastic because they'll just generate one for you and put it in this vault. So it keeps the reuse down. There are a couple of downsides to it. First of all, you need to have a very strong, like a passphrase that secures it. So a passphrase, rather than just a password, a passphrase is something like the squirrel is wearing purple shoes. And you can throw an exclamation point in there or some special characters or whatever, but it's a lot easier to remember one of those than a whole lot more passwords. Okay. So you want to secure it with that. And you also want to use multi-factor authentication. So that's where, like when we log into our banks, we get a text message with the code that we put in. That's multi-factor authentication. We can also have a phone app that gives us a code that rolls every once in a while. It gives us a new code every 30 seconds or so. Those are also great. Secure it with one of those. There are physical tokens like YubiKeys, which are not something I recommend for the typical person, but make sure you're protecting that account with multi-factor authentication. Also, wherever else possible, protect your other accounts too, like Facebook, it's available, Twitter, it's available, Instagram, all of the social media accounts, it's available to do multi-factor authentication or two-step authentication. Same with not only your bank accounts, but major retailers like Amazon and stuff. Secure those accounts with multi-factor. I know it takes a little bit extra work, but it's ultimately well worth it. And when I say factors, what I mean is a factor is something you know, something you are, or something you have. So if I know a password and I also use a fingerprint, that's two different factors. Same with if I have a key card and a PIN, I have a key card and a PIN. So you can combine these to make things more and more secure. That's what we mean when we talk about multi-factor or two-factor authentication. Some things are also known as two-step. You may see that in like some of your social media ones where they call it two-step instead of two-factor. That's because technically you're using a password, which is something you know, and maybe the code that's sent to you, which is essentially a PIN number, which is also something you know. They're not two different factors. It's called two-step, but essentially it gets the same job done. So if you don't see two-factor look for two-step authentication. And a couple of other real quick tips to go through. Be careful with any of the attachments that you get in a document. Don't unsubscribe from spam or ones that look like they're phishing, even if they have the button. That just tells the people on the other end that you have an active email account that can actually be used against you later on, get you on lists where you get even more stuff. Don't reply to it. It's even if you know it's a scam and you're like, I'm going to mess with these folks, don't do that, please. It'll get you on the list again, and these folks are really good at this. Always check that from address to make sure that it's right. Always hover the links where you can report these things to your organizations, within your organizations, if they allow that. It helps them get an idea of what's going on. And last but not least, I can get you a copy of this too. This is a PDF that we have that you can print out. And when you're in that heightened emotional state where you're going, oh my gosh, I think this is a scam, they're pushing really hard, but I don't remember what to look for, this is a little cheat sheet for that. These are the red flags. So you can go, okay, I need to make sure I know who it's from. I need to make sure the date and time makes sense and all that. It's a cute little cheat sheet that I find actually really, really helpful for when they have you all riled up like that. So having said that, that's the end of my slides. This is where you can contact me, my email address. I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to talk about different scams and things like that that people have experienced and seen. And so at this point, I'd like to go back and I'd like to ask you all if you have any questions, if you've seen any scams of your own, and if you would like to go ahead and ask these questions. So please type your questions into the Q&A or even the chat box at this point, and we will be happy to answer those. So as of right now, do we have any questions out there?
Nothing yet, but we'll give everyone a few minutes to type stuff in. Thank you, Eric. That was really helpful. I was hoping you were going to get to the password manager or password vault piece, because that's something that we do use as a team and think is really important and have shared with clients in the past too. Just such an easy way. If you have a really strong passphrase on your password vault,
yeah,
you can have all the crazy 18 characters with uppercase and lowercase and symbols, and you don't have to remember them.
And it's so easy to generate the new ones. And you know what? They have so many features and they're really inexpensive. The ones that even charge are inexpensive. There's some that are free, but I personally use LastPass. I've also used 1Password. They're all really good, honestly. But I love the fact that I can take my phone and all my passwords for my accounts are synced to my phone and my laptop when I travel and my desktop here. And even further than that, my wife's account, we share passwords. So if she goes in and pays the bills and you log in and it goes, oh, it's been 6 months, you need to change your password. And you always go, oh, well, she can generate a new one right there. It saves it in the vault, which is shared with me, and I automatically have it. I have no idea that we've ever gone through that. They are just awesome. They do take some getting used to, though. They're not always super smooth. You have to maybe go in and do a copy of the password and paste it sometimes, but for the most part, they automatically fill. And I just love that they do that.
Yeah, and they do. This is one I'm working on following your advice. They do tell you when you have a repeated password. So when you're setting it up and you add it and you have that on a different site, it gives you that alert, that warning, and says, this is not a good idea.
Yeah. And a lot of them will even, some of the services they offer, they'll look for you in password breach lists and say, oh, this password is part of a breach. You're going to want to change that right now. So yeah, they're super handy for that. But that's one of the biggest things that gets people in trouble is reusing their passwords on multiple websites.
Do you have any recommendations? So you talk about some websites require you to change your password every so often. If you're using a passphrase for, let's say, for your master password, for your password vault, do you recommend changing that at any certain interval?
Not necessarily. What I would say is maybe once a year or so, because if you use a really long, like that, the squirrel is wearing purple shoes, it doesn't make sense. It's not like anything that's going to be easy to do. And so in those cases, I don't recommend you change it for a long time. They're very secure. If you're using much shorter ones, it may not hurt, but yeah, long secure ones are good.
Great. We do have a couple questions that are coming in, if you see there in the chat.
Yeah, I see the Google Chrome password generation. Okay. So the generation through Google Chrome isn't bad. It'll generate the passwords. I don't like using that to hold your passwords though. And the reason for that is it's not necessarily designed to be secure from the ground up. It's more of a convenience thing. And we've seen things like just recently, within the last month or so, Cisco, the big IT equipment manufacturer, very well known, big organization, they had someone end up with their VPN being compromised because they had saved that password in their personal Google Chrome settings. The attackers were able to, when they were on his computer, trick it into giving up that password. And then they were able to log into Cisco through the VPN using the Google Chrome one, because they're not designed to be the most secure things ever. They're handy, but they're not really secure. So I don't recommend relying on those. I especially don't recommend putting anything that has to do with your work stuff in your personal Google Chrome side. So, and let's see, recommendation for passwords, unique. You know, that's the big thing there. Unique passwords. And what is smishing? So smishing is SMS phishing. Because we're so clever as security people, we call everything ishing. So there's email phishing with a P. There's smishing, which is SMS or text message phishing. And then there's also vishing, which is voice phishing. Those are those phone calls you get saying, hey, this is the IRS, your social security number has been suspended. You know, that's a vishing call there. Now, all of these things are based on social engineering, which we talked about. What we're seeing that's kind of scary sometimes is that they're combining some of these now, like when we're talking about attacking organizations. So they'll send a fake email and they'll follow up with a fake text message from an executive and say, I just sent you an email, need you to check on that. I need you to wire the money. And the people go, oh, I got an email and I got a text message. This must be legitimate. And they're getting real clever with stuff like that. So that's the different ishings, but they're all social engineering. They're all set up to kind of mess with us in the same ways as the emails are. So, oh, question about Norton and privacy monitor. So Norton wants me to do a privacy monitor assistant. Should I? I'm not going to say, and this is definitely not an official company recommendation one way or another. Okay, let's put that out there. I don't use those. I just don't. I personally don't see a lot of value in those. I just don't. I really, really don't. When it comes to protecting like my identity and stuff, I tend to do things like going out to the credit bureaus and locking my credit so that no new accounts can be opened in my name. Things like that I'll do. I don't really like a lot of these programs that promise to save you from everything. I just haven't ever seen them really deliver. Okay, we got another one. Yep. Do you want me to read it or you want to?
Go for it.
All right. All right. This is from Victor. I recently received a phishing call saying my Amazon account was compromised, and the person asked me questions about my bank accounts and whether or not I was familiar with identity theft. I immediately hung up the phone. Brilliant. 100%.
A plus.
Because yes, absolutely. That was exactly the right thing to do. I am seeing or hearing of these things where you'll get a phone call and they're saying, we need to confirm. I actually, you know what? I did one. It was actually for a reporter. I think I blogged about it too. We did it on ABC7 in DC with one of the reporters there. And it was one of those Amazon ones that you get that says, hey, your account has been suspended. We need to validate things. What I did is on a secure computer, I click OK next, and it asks you first for your login information. It's not going to Amazon, right? So it takes you to an Amazon login to confirm who you are. Type the username and password, which was just totally made up. Said, oh, okay, cool. This is you. Now we need to verify some of your information. And the first thing it was asking me was like my address, my date of birth, my social security number, all of this to get your Amazon account back, right? And so I put in a bunch of fake stuff there. hit enter, it accepted it, it just copied it somewhere, they'll get it later. And then finally they wanted me to verify my credit card numbers. And so I just put in a fake one there. And that was actually where it finally validated things and ended. But you can see they use this step by step to get more and more information from you. And this is what they do. They say, oh, well, we already have your credit card number. To prove it's you, you need to verify it with us. And it will never, ever work that way. So kudos on you for spotting that and hanging up. But I'll tell you, the first time you get one of those calls and they start saying things and asking those questions, it can be confusing and sometimes even a little intimidating. And so that's where it gets us with, up here a lot of times where we make the mistakes.
Yeah, we've had stories, unfortunate stories. Luckily, people did the same thing, but where someone gets a call from the IRS or from Medicare saying something's wrong and we need all your information. And, that gets you scared. Oh my gosh, my tax return or my Medicare coverage. It's that emotional response that you were mentioning.
Well, and here's where it kind of is a little bit different too. And to coin a phrase from my teenage daughter, depending on who you are, it hits different. Okay. Like if I get something saying my social security number is suspended, whatever, it's not scary to me. I know it's a scam. I can laugh it off. If it's somebody though, that's say elderly and all of their income, they're on fixed income and that is how they pay their bills. That's how they put food in the refrigerator. And somebody says, you're not getting your check this month. That's a very scary thing. It actually impacts them differently. It has a different impact on them. And that's why we can look at those from the outside sometimes and go, it was so blatantly obvious, but we're not in that emotional spot where we're going, oh my gosh, the fridge is almost bare as it is. I need that check in 2 days. And now they're telling me I'm not going to get it. That's a major source of fear for people. So yeah, for different people, different things hit differently. And this social engineering, I like to say, is like marketing. They hit you with the right message to the right person at the right time. And it's very, very effective.
Yeah, so I think we'll wrap up with this final question we have here. Any advice or simple instructions for someone with an elderly parent who might not be able to remember all these suggestions?
It is hard to remember all of these suggestions. It really is. I would write down the cheat sheet real quick. If somebody calls, is it this? Is it this? Give them something to look at and to process. Start off with the reminder, take a deep breath, right? Because that helps us refocus on it. And then have some things to look at. Should they have your phone number? Does this make sense? Ask them how to call them back, but write it down for them so they have somewhere that they can look at it again. Because it can be very stressful. And for older people that may already be having some mental decline through the years, that's a real problem. So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Eric. And I think you mentioned that you'd be willing to send us that PDF cheat sheet you have. And if so,
Absolutely.
What we'll do is we'll send it to everyone who is here today. So you can have that as your takeaway. And maybe that was, that's something that's helpful for an elderly person or anyone just looking
Absolutely.
for some training on what to look for in those emails that might be those red flags.
Yep.
So thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate this. Was really helpful, great information, albeit scary. It's better to be in the know and be skeptical so we can avoid it. We really appreciate your time.
Hey, happy to be here. And, like we say, it's good to know before, right? Very clever there. Well, thank you, though. Thank you. And everyone stay safe out there. Be careful in these holidays. Scammers are going to be out there like crazy.
They are. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.